Welcome to A Lawyer's Guide to the Galaxy, a podcast about geek culture by lawyers with your hosts, Ben Siders and Kirk Taman.
And welcome back to Lawyer's Guide to the Galaxy, the podcast that asks interesting questions that don't have any answers with your host, Ben Siders. That's me, and the other guy is Kirk Damon.
As always, Kirk has been the captain of the Enterprise.
We are intellectual property lawyers and certified geeks practicing law in St. Louis, Missouri. I'm not going to announce where you can find us because nobody ever talks to us. We're going to redo all of our social medias and
Actually,
websites.
Actually, they do, but for some reason, they're all finding us on LinkedIn right now.
Well, LinkedIn's been very good to us. I always remember there was that flow chart went around for what social media you should post your like content on.
Yeah.
My first question was, do you want anybody to read it? No. Put it on LinkedIn. But it's not true anymore.
Yeah, it's definitely not true anymore.
We are here to do a postscript on Stranger Things. Today is January 7th, 2026. The series finale.
It's the afternoon, by the way, just in case something happens this evening. We're going to talk about that.
That'll be relevant in a second. So far as anybody officially knows, the series finale of the Stranger Things series of television programs has come to a conclusion, and Kirk and I have both seen it. I think we threatened to talk about it in our last episode, and we're actually going to do that now. Yep. This will be a unique treat, hopefully, for everybody, because Kirk and I have talked about this basically not at all, other than some very vague, I think I texted Kirk afterwards and said, and it was a very J.J. Abrams ending.
Which I actually now disagree with, but that's okay.
I may have to put some meat on those bones to explain what I mean. And then Kirk had generally insinuated that he was a little disappointed. So we're going to talk about the finale for Stranger Things Season 5 and for the whole series, give you our thoughts on that. So
Needless to say, serious spoiler episode.
So if you have not seen it and somehow don't plan to, then I guess if you don't plan to, you can listen to this because I'm not spoiling anything. But if you do plan to see it and you somehow haven't, then you might want to wait. So okay, so let's start here. Kirk, I'll give you 60 seconds, which in Kirk terms means 5 minutes. But go.
What do you mean 5 minutes? It's at least an hour and a half.
Give me your 60-second overview of what you liked, disliked, hated, loved, good, bad, and the ugly in Stranger Things series finale.
I liked the way they kind of followed up with Henry. I mentioned it in conjunction with the last episode. I thought Henry became a very interesting character. I liked that. I actually liked the way they portrayed the Abyss, which was kind of a weird thing to me. One scene that I actually really enjoyed, this is going to sound really weird, I was very, very pleased in the way they destroyed the Upside Down. The fact that they literally, like you saw, it get blown away. I thought that was just sort of a great, sort of way to portray it.
Just mean like the visual design?
The visual design. Yeah. To me, that was just a brilliant way to display it. I loved the D&D ending.
I did too. I thought that was excellent.
I also really didn't like the last hour.
Interesting. That's the part I liked the most.
So I'll sort of, leave it there as to what it is. So my basic take is I liked pretty much, other than the last hour, I actually really liked it, but I really didn't like the last hour. And I have a lot of reasons for that. My primary one is I thought it was just way too long. But we can go from there.
All right. So,
how about you?
So for me, what I liked the most was the amount of time that they dedicated to wrapping up all these characters' arcs and kind of giving us an idea of where they land. I agree. I think that it was probably too long, but I'm glad they gave it more time than just like your typical 5-minute, putting a bow on it before moving on. What I think I liked the least is that the way they resolved Henry's arc. It looked like they were going to lean into Henry having a redemptive arc through Will, which I thought was narratively and thematically very compelling and strong, given that Will was sort of the beginning of all of this. And I thought they were going there based on how they retconned what happened in season 1 and the very first episode of this season by showing that Henry was there all along using Will. And I thought it would be, narratively fitting for Will to bring him back from the brink. But then if you do that, you can't have a big dumb fight at the end, which is what everybody wanted.
Yeah.
And one of the criticisms online is that the big dumb fight wasn't big or dumb enough. Although
I thought it was dumb enough.
There's plenty of dumb. Yeah, we'll get to that. So I thought they were leaning towards Henry having a redemptive opportunity, which would have been, I think, this is me as a writer, being much more interesting and satisfying. I was not at all surprised, just a little disappointed that they didn't go there. And instead they leaned into, no, Henry is just a horrible person who chose evil for whatever reason, although we have no idea why. He just did. And so we got our big dumb fight. And what I especially found disappointing is in the end, we we impale Vecna on a spike only to have Joyce walk up to a helpless creature and then just mercilessly hack at his head 9 times, so like
with an axe.
The moral arc of the series was completely abandoned during that moment. And I understand it's just a revenge fantasy. The guy has been evil and done horrible things to a lot of people. But Joyce in that moment had a choice on how to deal with this, and she chose to become Henry for the moment, which, you can write like that. That just wasn't really set up for me that's where Joyce's story was going. I guess it's understandable as a parent who's furious about all of this, but like that's not where Will was. Will was somewhere else. He was moving on to try to redeem Henry, and then his mother is just trying to mercilessly slaughter him. And that didn't feel like a moment motivated by narrative choices, but by audience expectations. We hate Vecna. We want to see him get his comeuppance, and so that's what they delivered.
Yeah. Actually, it's interesting because I had I somewhat agreed with the Joyce scene. I didn't particularly like the idea that she's just hacking at him when he's defenseless. I was expecting when you suddenly heard him sort of breathing again, I was expecting the idea of like, would he actually expel the particles and have kind of a Darth Vader type, like come to Jesus type moment.
Or have him prove he's still a threat so that it justifies her action. But he's just there completely helpless, and maybe it's meant to be a parallel. The children are also helpless, and that's what he took advantage of. But again, that's the kid. Will had moved on. Like he was the lens for that understanding. So I don't know. That didn't land for me.
The one thing I had with it to me is that between every chop she has, you sort of see what he did to each of the people.
No, that was very effective.
Which I thought was very effective.
That was effectively done.
But I also thought it was the idea of like them letting go. But the one you don't see it for is Joyce. And so I kind of had that idea that like, okay, everybody else is letting go, but Joyce kind of isn't. That was the thing I had with that.
There was a scene in the falling action. When we were going through all the characters, I kept waiting for the upside down to not really be gone, like at the end of season 1.
Yeah.
There was a scene where there's a phone in the foreground and it rings and somebody picks it up. And I was like, here it is. It's going to happen. And thank God it didn't.
Well, they totally indicated it could, and then they did.
I think they framed it that way on purpose to head fake us. So.
But the thing that I thought was interesting, I appreciated the idea behind Vecna. And I'll take it. I actually read one of the interviews with the Duffer Brothers afterwards, and I kind of agree with. I took the Vecna the way they took it, which was not that Henry was a bad person. It's that Henry had made a choice and he now felt so trapped by it, he felt the need to maintain it. And so it wasn't necessarily that he was a bad person, is that he felt trapped by his own choice. And in some sense, it was I almost got a fatalism from him at that stage.
Yeah.
The idea that he sort of knew this wasn't going to work at that stage. He had failed at that stage because the kids are getting away. You already have the thing that he probably can't do it.
Back up a second. What is he trying to do? Like, he wants to merge the Abyss with Earth for some reason because Earth sucks and the Abyss is better. But I mean, what does he see in the Abyss? I don't understand that part of it.
The way I took it from it is...
Or is that what the Mind Flayer wants?
It's the Mind Flayer wants.
Okay.
I think the Mind Flayer wants the humans. The way I took him was to be fuel. The whole idea that basically, the way the Mind Flayer looks dead, it's lying on its back, it's dead. Now, it's not actually lying on its back. It stands up in a way that says no. But the idea behind it, when you see the kids, they're inside what's obviously its chest. Its heart is obviously above Vecna. It starts beating when the kids are in it. I looked at it as the idea that said it needed other living organisms as fuel. So it effectively saw us as it needed to go to our world. It was going to burn the kids out.
Which is maybe why the Abyss was hollowed out. Yeah. It had consumed everything.
It had consumed everything, and then it had died, or it had gone into some kind of a stasis, and it needed it. So to me, it was all the Mind Flayer. I think Henry had found it. Initially, he was just scared, and that's the idea where, again, he was scared. He didn't know how to take from it, but it gave him immense power. That was the kind of thing behind it, and so he didn't quite know how to react. Then when he gets sent back by 11 is kind of when he chooses it and says, no, I'm going to have this. I want the power. I kind of want to destroy Earth. Whether you can treat it as being in a moment of just, mean revenge or anything else, that's when he kind of chooses it. And so for him, he's kind of along for the ride with the Mind Flayer. And what you really get is the Mind Flayer, are they equals at all? Or is he really dominated? I got the idea that he's really dominated.
Because he says we're one, which is a callback to his designation as one, which I guess, the way that shot was framed, it was supposed to really land on us. And I was like, that's corny. That's never what one meant in the context. It's just another cheesy retcon. Yep. But then okay, if they're one, then Henry doesn't really have agency anymore. Like, he's just a victim of this, who's been turned to evil by this Mind Flayer, because we have no other reason to think he's evil other than when he was a kid, he had the misfortune of stumbling upon this guy who had the magic mind flayer particles in his briefcase. So
that apparently is going to be explained in another follow-up show. What the rock is that's in the briefcase.
It's just harder to be angry at Henry for what he did when he didn't seem to have a whole lot of genuine choice in the matter. And so the whole thing is written as a revenge fantasy in the last episode. But I don't hate this. Yeah. I don't hate Henry. Like he seems like, and they even go out of their way to make that clear with Will. Will's like, you don't have to choose this. And Henry's like, it's too late. I already have. Okay, maybe under the circumstances, but like from what we know of Henry's past, it doesn't feel like much of a genuine choice, and it just made the whole thing. It made Joyce's chopping his head off that we're supposed to feel as a triumphant moment really ring hollow to me. And again, this is maybe me being overly pedantic as a writer, but I'm looking at it and feeling like the emotions you want me to feel, Duffer Brothers, I'm not getting.
Once he was impaled, I think he should have just stayed dead.
Yeah, I mean, that would have been fine, right? Okay, there's a fight, there's a mortal threat, L kills him, it's over.
Yeah. And then the point being, basically, at that point in time, it doesn't matter, and that's why I said to me, when he has the scene with Will, it feels almost fatalistic. Like, I know I can't win at this stage, but I'm too far gone. We have to have the fight.
Yeah.
And so we're going to have the fight because I have no other choice. It has to happen. But I kind of know I'm going to lose. And it's kind of like, okay, that works actually as a redemptive arc for him.
It feels like, what it reminds me a little bit of is Rise of Skywalker, where there was
I was thinking the same thing.
There was so much stuff they had to retcon, redo, undo, re-explain, that we spent a whole season going through and reinterpreting 4 episodes to get to this point. And I don't know why that choice was made. It feels like there was a lot of narrative space to go in different directions. But even then, we got to that last episode, and I was like, okay, they've kind of just barely kind of cobbled this together. Now they're going to land the plane. And I felt like, maybe this is why I liked the last hour the best, is we got done with the tortured, conflicted, confusing Vecna time frame and could get back to what made this series a strength, which was the characters.
In some respects. So my take for it was, the reason I actually enjoyed the sort of final boss battle is because it actually did feel like a final boss battle, and it felt like a D&D boss battle. They even say take its hit points off. They're all kind of attacking it differently using different methods.
They said that was a callback to Baldur's Gate 3, where like you have to use everybody in different positions, and like it was meant to be a D&D type battle. It was designed that way.
But it's also just, you see, like, some of them are throwing fireballs, some of them are sort of doing the combination as to what it is. You get Lucas suddenly using the slingshot again.
Yes. Or it reference.
You get the knife spears. The guys using those, and the idea, okay, that's working. It's one of those things where, to me, it felt like a boss battle. I actually didn't think it was long enough. It was one of those because it felt like it ended too quickly.
I actually agree, and I do not like the big dumb fight. There was plenty of dumb here. It wasn't actually that big. I expected more. Not that it didn't need to be Star Wars Episode 3 45-minute lightsaber battle where 5 minutes in you're bored.
Yeah.
But it did feel like it was over too quickly and it was too easy. Which really kind of undermined the stakes. I think the fans wanted a half an hour of that, and I would have been fine with like once it got going, 10 minutes is plenty.
Yeah, I think the thing that I had for it was it needed to be a true boss battle, and unfortunately, it felt like the boss battle where you already know you're going to win. It's just a matter of knocking all its hit points off.
Well, like they're right up next to it, to where like it's putting the claws down, and it's like already past them, and they take off running from what's basically a 60-story AT-AT walker, and somehow they outrun it.
Well, and actually, one of the problems I had with it, and this was the comment I said, the biggest thing for it is, I never felt any peril for Nancy when it was carrying up the thing.
I knew she was going to be fine. Yeah.
And to me, it was like, that didn't work. I should have been scared she was going to get eaten, something was going to happen to her, and I just felt no peril for her. And I was like, that's the problem. I kind of had with it.
Better designed action sequence. A good action sequence establishes the nature of the peril by showing somebody getting destroyed, right? Somebody somewhere. This is where your red shirts come in. Find a disposable character to kill, so we understand that this thing is really lethal and how. And then you put your characters in a position where that's how they're going to die. And as the audience, you have no idea how they're going to get out of it. And if you do it right, you find a way for the character to use their intelligence to do that, rather than some Deus ex machina. So compare this to the Rancor in Star Wars. In Return of the Jedi, right? We see one of the dancers falls into the pit and gets eaten. We don't really see why.
See anything. We just
know there's a monster. Yeah. And then when Luke falls in, they throw a Gamorrean guard in so the Rancor can catch it and eat it first. We get a sense of how big it is, how fast it is, how strong it is, and what's going to happen to Luke. And then it turns its sights to Luke, and how does Luke solve it? He doesn't use the Force. He picks up a skull and throws it as a button, and knocks the gate down on it. which is an extremely satisfying action sequence. There's a narrative over the course of that sequence where we as the audience are taught about the monster, taught about the threat, and the character uses his intelligence to solve the problem.
Yeah, you
Very
even have
satisfying.
the bone. You even have them cramming the bone
Yeah,
in
the
its
bone,
mouth.
yeah.
And the fact that like that's an annoyance enough that he drops him.
Yeah.
But then he figures once
Problem's
he's
still
dropped
not
him,
solved.
he breaks the
Which
bone.
tells you
and
more,
moves
right?
on.
How
Yeah.
strong the Rancor is. None of that really happened here, right? Like, okay, what's the plan? We're going to get up on the high ground and Nancy's going to be a decoy. Everybody run.
Yeah.
And then 5 minutes later, we win.
Yeah, and again, the thing that I had with it was one of those things where you totally could have had Nancy die in that scene. I actually contemplated it afterwards and said, you just had Jonathan and Steve sort of had their heart to heart about, okay, actually neither one of us is after Nancy because she's a strong, independent woman. She then proves it with the idea of, no, I'm the decoy without even asking. She just does it. I'm like, you totally could have had her be hurt, or even if she's not killed, she could have been badly hurt. They have to do something with it. Now, yes, that's a little bit of a princess in trouble type of concern, but the idea that you could have created the actual peril with Nancy there very, very readily, and she would have been a reasonable target given what had happened in the prior sort of heart-to-heart scene.
Yeah.
But again, I never felt any peril for Nancy.
I didn't either.
And I obviously didn't for any of the others because they were nowhere near it. The only time you ever felt peril is when the dying thing almost fell on Dustin. And I was like, wait, it's already dead. This is not the place for peril. And that's as opposed to, for example, Steve falling off the tower, which is a scene of real peril. That scene gives you some real peril.
They foreshadowed something might happen to Steve. So then when it does, I was thinking, like, are they actually going to kill Steve or not? I wouldn't have been surprised if they had. I also wasn't surprised that they didn't.
But it was also as soon as you saw he'd been caught, my son told me, he's like, Dustin. And I'm like, no, Jonathan.
Jonathan. Had to be Jonathan. Yep.
And it was Jonathan. So, but that was sort of the thing I had with it. So that was my take from the first half. I actually liked the way they resolved the thing with the kids. I actually thought I did a surprisingly good use of Derek.
Yeah,
I actually thought. I mean, what I would say is a difficult character to have dealt with in that kind of a scene. I liked the fact that he plain couldn't keep up. And that the rest of the kids were like, no, you have to. You're part of this now. It kind of worked. As they said, they gave him, he stopped being the dichotomy and became a more complex middle character in those scenes. And it really worked. But at the same time, he still had his, like when he gives, Vecna the bird at the end. It's still one of those things where I'm like, it's still Derek. Like it's still very Derek.
He can't help himself,
Yeah. And I have to admit, I actually really liked what they did with Derek. I thought they could have done a little more with Holly when the kids were getting away, but she'd already kind of had her major arc, so I was kind of like, okay, we got a timing issue.
Well,
maybe
I kept waiting for something to come back with the necklace that got broken, and they just kind of dropped that and left it alone.
Yeah, so the thing like that, I knew as soon as we saw him, I'm like, he's gonna have to face his fears. We're gonna find out what it is. And as soon as they're in the cave and they realize they're in the cave,
now he's gonna come in.
I'm also like, now he's in the cave, you have to get in the mine shaft. We actually have to see him play out the mine shaft. That was another scene I loved. So the scenes I tended to love actually were a lot of visual design. I love the scene where he walks up and both him and him younger self are in exact synchronicity with the movement.
Yep.
I mean, that probably took a few takes as my guess, but that looked so good.
I think one of the things they did really well in this season was the actor that plays Henry. I forget his name. He's excellent, first of all. His brooding and like his face down, heavy brow look. He conveyed a lot of emotion.
Am I the only person that wants to see him play Dexter?
Oh yeah, he'd be good in that. I think that's why we got so much Henry not in the Vecna costume. Is because in the Vecna costume he's just this weird. He reminds me of that guy from Guardians.
And he has no
Groot.
facial expression because he's got so much makeup on his face.
He's just evil Groot. Like it's weird. And I think they wanted to do more with the Henry character where he has a lot more expressive range. And honestly, I found Henry more menacing and frightening than Vecna.
I think as What's-It, he's actually his most menacing self. When he's got the sort of What's-It attire on, I think he's the most menacing. To me, he's more menacing in season 4 when he's one. He's in the sort of environments of the lab.
Again, a testament to the actor when he really has a range of facial expression and emotion. He really comes across well.
I mean, it's as bad as it sounds in conjunction with it because it's going to typecast him. Damn, I want to see him as a villain again. As the actor. I mean, if I wanted to cast an action movie right now and I want an evil villain, I'd be seriously looking at him because he is a really good villain.
No, he did a greite job. Well cast role. The actress they recast for Holly was good. I was surprised but pleased that Mike's dad was alive. Like he just kind of there all of a sudden after not being in the story for 4 episodes. Like, oh, I guess he lived.
That was the other complaint I actually had from it. So there were another complaint I had from it is and I know people are kind of this, it felt like there were just too many unresolved plot lines. And this is where let's get into the second hour. Part of the thing I think I had into in the second hour is, to me, they spent a huge amount of time giving us what to me felt, I'm going to use the phrase, as fake endings. And I'm going to explain what I mean by that in a little bit. But at the same time, they didn't give us endings for like a third of the characters.
What happened to all the jocks who beat the crap out of Dustin like the first episode? I expected that to be a running through line of this season. They're gone.
They're gone. You see them at the very beginning, and then they're gone. They're pointless once you've had this sort of reckoning with Eddie's death.
Yeah. I mean, all you needed in that scene was for him to go there and to establish that Dustin remains deeply troubled by Eddie's demise.
Yeah.
I mean, you only need that for his reconciliation and his fight with Steve later. So, but there's a lot of ways to do that. So why cast 5 extra characters that you have to feed, house, and pay union fees for, to have this one scene that ultimately is pointless for the rest?
I don't think the Jock should have been in season 5 at all. I mean, I'll just point that out.
I agree. There's no reason for them to be there.
Or even in season 4, quite frankly.
I guess you have them there so you can establish that Dustin is just all out of give a F's at that point,
Yeah.
But like, there's a lot of ways to write that, and that just... the way it was set up, I expected it to go somewhere else, and it just was one of many things that was introduced for the immediate purposes for which they needed it, and then dropped.
Now, I also didn't like the Jocks in season 4 either. I think I've even said that on this show. I really didn't like the Jocks in season 4 because to me they felt too stereotypical. I knew from the start there that it's, they put the Jocks in so that in the final episode they can muck stuff up. Like, it was and of course that's exactly
for Jonathan. But again, better, smarter writing. They gave that character a different arc. They had him come around and be somebody that we liked to the point where he's been a hero. For the last, I think he really came into his own in season 2. But
he does.
Steve the Hare Harrington is like a fan favorite now, even though he starts out kind of not being at all.
Yeah, I mean, he's kind of an obnoxious character. He's kind of supposed to be an obnoxious character, and he's kind of the foil to the nerdy kids. He's the the player that's out dating all the women in the club as opposed to the nerdy kids in middle school.
One of the best lines in the whole series is when I think it's Dustin is asking him like how he gets girls and how he gets the hair like that, and he's like, "It's real simple, Pert Plus."
No, it was Pert. It was
it Pantene?
No, it's one of the specific women's brands. That's the thing behind it.
Yeah, it was something like that.
Pert Plus is known as the guy's brand. That's why I knew it was
that right? Yeah. It was something that we completely would not get, but once he says it makes sense, and it was super funny.
And that was super funny. And so that was the thing. So my thing with the second half was we sort of got into it. I appreciated, and what I'd say I appreciate about the second half, I actually appreciated a show that actually did try to do an epilogue of not just saying, okay, the threat is over, end it here. Now, I really did appreciate the transition. I mean, they get in the trucks, they're leaving the Upside Down, the bomb's rigged, Vecna's dead, unquestionably at that point in time. And I also wondered, quite frankly, that's why she had to behead him, is because there was no question he was dead.
Yeah.
But the thing that I had with it is, okay, we've got that kind of thing going on. And I'm like, we're kind of doing that thing, and the whole time they're driving, I'm sitting here going, did we all forget about the military base? Did we all forget about the military base?
All the pregnant women that are still in it,
and as soon as you get outside the military base, in the main world, they blow the tires on both the vehicles, and then they're immediately chasing after 11, and you're like, okay, that was great. The whole idea that they were so lost in the defeat of Vecna, they all forgot about the fact that there's still all this other trouble going on, and they're going to play right into 11 and 8, and what the whole concern was with that. We're going to see, is 11 going to get captured? And then it's 11's not here. And I'm like,
she's back. She's
where's
back
11?
Yep.
Well, and it was like, okay, that was the kind of thing with it. And I'm like, is she in the Upside Down? But how did she get out? Or is she supposed to have just hidden now?
I assume she bailed out of the truck before they crossed over.
That's the way they sort of show it. But one of the things I thought was really intriguing, this is going to tie into the D&D ending as to what it was. When they have the scene with, the helicopter blowing up and the going to shoot 8, and you see him get knocked back and the gun go off. When you then see that 8 has been shot, my immediate first response was, is this an illusion?
Yeah, I had the same thought. But they seem to make clear that it was not.
Well, but then you have Hopper has his hands on her, and I'm like, okay, she can't be an illusion because we know her illusions have no substance.
Yeah.
But the comment with it is, could her being shot be an illusion? Now he has blood on his hands. So okay, probably not, as to whatever it was, but I still thought that. But then the immediate thing that went through my mind is I'm like, okay, but are we going to swap her out? And I'm like, if Hopper leaves, we could swap her out. And then Hopper leaves. Mm-hmm. And I was like, we could swap 8 out. And I mean, especially if 11 isn't touching 8 when Hopper gets back, and 11 isn't touching 8 when Hopper gets back. And so the immediate thing when I saw the thing is I'm like, is 8 dead or not? And I'm like, I have the very real feeling that 8's not supposed to be dead at this point in time. We're going to see her show up sometime later. I figured we might see her suddenly in the final battle, something like that.
Yeah, that's what I thought was going to happen.
I quite frankly wondered whose side she was on. I always wondered whose side 8 was on. I actually kind of thought she might be working with K. That was one of the things I had sort of with it. But it was one of those where I was like, okay, we don't really know what happened to 8. We're going to kind of leave that open. When we then have 11 inside the gate, I actually had some of the same thought Mike did, which is, how is she using her powers?
Well, because they show you that they've got the interrupters on.
But she's also inside the Upside Down, and he's not.
Yeah.
And so it was one of those things where I'm like, where is this? And it kind of looks like it's almost like a movie set, like her standing in front of it. Now, part of that I'm like, practical effects, okay. That kind of thing sort of being with it. But then it's we know we're in her mind, because that's what she said earlier, is when you see that sort of wet floor, that's her mind, her empty mind. When she's doing this. And I'm like, okay, that's an intriguing sort of concept as to what it is. And then it was the very first line it's the, Mike, I need you to explain to them. And immediately what jumped into my mind when he does that is is this fake? But then they play it out like it's not. And I'm like, the problem we had with 11 is 11 couldn't live a normal life afterwards. So this is a fitting ending. It works well as to what it is. We now finally see the scene from the trailer, the original trailer, of Dustin being held back by the camouflaged arms. Yep. Screaming, which I always figured was Steve's death, because Jonathan's actually wearing that uniform. So it was one of those things where I had the thing with it. And so I'm like, okay, that's what we're going to have. We see that scene. Okay, we are actually going to kill 11. I never thought that was an inappropriate end, sort of it might be. Okay, and then we've got to deal with this. That's what I liked about the end scene, is the 18 months later, okay, we're now approaching graduation. We have these kind of the storylines continuing. We're to where we are. We kind of see Max is recovered.
Let's back up a second. What did you think of? So the 11's gone, so K's purpose is gone, and I guess the military just folds up and goes away. Everybody goes back to normal, and nobody ever talks about it again.
That's my comment about my unfulfilled things, is we have this giant military base that's set up, which
in the middle of Hawkins,
Indiana, which has a massive attack, killing a lot of people. So there's a lot of dead soldiers.
Several of them.
Yeah, there's a lot of dead soldiers we got to deal with, stuff like that. And then it just disappears in 18 months, and we get no resolution of what the hell Kay's doing now. And I was like, why did Kay just go away?
I mean, I guess because her purpose was gone. She thought 11 was gone, but she's portrayed as being ruthlessly tenacious and unrelenting.
Yeah.
To the point of being a psychopath. And then once it looks like her quarry is lost, she's just done.
Yeah, and you have their old base and all the pregnant women in the Upside Down, or was that all an illusion? And so you have the question behind that is, it's okay, all this stuff is destroyed, behind it. And I'm like, why did she just give up? And I mean, she went after her at the beginning of season 4. She went after her in season 3. I mean, not really. I mean, season 3 still not really K, but it's the same idea.
It was the same group.
Yeah, same group. And so it was that kind of thing where I'm sitting here and I'm like, my biggest complaint was that we needed something to resolve K.
That felt very abrupt.
I actually really felt, in many respects, we needed K to die. Because it was the only way, because she was so tenacious as to what it was, she needed to do it.
I thought they'd leave her in the Upside Down somehow, and that would be the end of her story.
She'd get stuck, or she'd go into the Upside Down to get 11, and so she'd get trapped in it.
Yeah, and they'd have to decide, we can get rid of K right now, but then 11 has to go with. That seemed like the moral quandary.
Yeah, those kind of things is what it is. And so those are the kind of things where I'm like, okay. And I did like the fact that they immediately, as soon as they come out, it's that they're trying to capture 11, they're going to play right into 8's statements as to what it is, and then it doesn't work. Yeah. I thought that was a really good statement. But then we have we got to resolve this. What bothered me with the resolution section is that we spend the next hour walking through what all of these characters are kind of doing at graduation, and they're playing into tropes. They're doing the kind of things, I mean, Dustin does what Eddie wanted to do. Those kind of things sort of behind it. It's like, okay, this all works, as to what it is. But it just felt too long. And the one that I use is the primary example. It also
felt disconnected to everything that had happened. I mean, I know 18 months has gone by, but it felt like the characters had really, really moved on from 4 straight years of trauma. More than that.
Yeah.
In a relatively short amount of time, and maybe there's kids are resilient undercurrent there.
And the town has moved on.
Yeah.
And there's no cracks in the ground anymore.
Yeah, everything is just literally painted over. That just
and they're still repairing the church.
Yeah,
I think it was a church that's in the center of town, and so that was so a couple of my complaints I had when I love the way the Upside Down got blown away. I love watching that sort of slow motion, just it being like just thrown over and stuff like that, and the idea of it being destroyed. I thought was a really cool way to do it. What I didn't like is when the portal closed. It still sort of looked like it was there.
I did a double take. I'm like, is it there or not? What are we supposed to learn from this?
I really wanted that to just be a brick wall.
Yeah.
Like there was just nothing there.
Yeah, me too. Like there was just nothing there the whole time. It would have been a little more stark.
And I thought that would have been just sort of a cool take, But the one that I really didn't like is the 4 older members of the group on the roof of the radio station. And the reason I didn't like it is because they're all talking about here's what they're doing in college, their sort of future things. And then they make this plan of we're going to get together in a month, at my, weird uncle's house so he can make his movie. And I'm like,
that was so random.
But I'm also like, none of this is going to happen. Like, we know these are fictional characters. It's one thing to say, John goes on to have a successful film career. It's another thing to say he's making a cannibalistic capitalist movie, at the weird uncle's garage, the weird uncle's mansion where they're meeting every month. I don't need that much detail. And what the hell else is happening in his life besides that?
It had a sense of like 80s movies and even 90s movies would do this, where at the end of the movie, there's a bunch of like short sequences where it talks about the characters do like, oh God, I can't remember what movie it was that did this, but a lot of the teen movies would do this. Like so-and-so are still together and so-and-so eventually broke up. And
I think even like Terminator did it, quite frankly. I think a couple of those even said something.
It was more common in comedy movies. This had a sense of trying to do that. I know they wanted to tell us what was happening to the characters, right? But you're right. Did we need to know much more than Jonathan went to film school, Nancy dropped out and just wanted to do a real job? And I also felt like Steve Harrington's character somehow regressed. Like, after all the growth he's gone through, he's still serially dating random chicks in Hawkins.
But I also did like the idea of him being the coach. I thought that
was good. I like that too.
Because
he's good with kids now. We know, right? Because he wanted all the kids, and now he's got them.
And I thought that was a sort of neat thing. And that was it. I then contrast
he's teaching sex ed. That was appropriate.
And so I then contrast that with the D&D game. And so we have the D&D game, and I'm going to skip the D&D game itself. But then at the end, they ride off into the sunset, and everybody's like, but that's unsatisfying. And they walk through all those kids. It takes them 30 seconds per kid to give you here's what happened to them. It's incredibly satisfying. There's a lot of open-end unclarity, sort of behind it. It's okay. Max and Lucas go on their date.
Yep.
We see that. By the way, if you haven't seen it, I thought this was interesting. The Duffer Brothers have officially said they shouldn't show it on film because they thought it spoiled it. They are watching Ghost. And they're actually watching the incredibly romantic scene in Ghost.
Yeah.
That's actually the movie they're
pottery
watching.
Scene.
Which I thought was a nice touch that they actually pointed that out, because they said we just couldn't show it because it was distracting, but we intended it to be that way.
Well, you'd also have to pay for the royalties for the clip.
But it was one of those things where I'm like, okay, that's actually really kind of cool. But so you have the thing that sort of is a reasonable resolution. Then that ties into but what about 11? Is a reasonable tie. But I was like, I could have done with just going straight from the end of the sort of scene where you have the end of the scene for them being in the vehicles to 18 months later, doing the stuff around graduation that they're getting ready to go to graduation. Maybe even skip Dustin's speech, but have some of the stuff from graduation. We could have done a lot of stuff. Go immediately to the D&D game and be done.
Yeah.
And that would have been 15, 20 minutes. And I thought you would have had plenty of epilogue. We would have seen it as plenty of closure. And that's why I just felt it was too long.
Well, who was it? Mike that didn't want to go to graduation?
Yeah. Because he can't move on past 11.
Yeah, that felt odd to me, like just weirdly timed.
And it's Hopper has to be the one to explain to him he needs to. And then that was Hopper's redemption arc.
Yeah, well, it was appropriate for Hopper to be the person, because he lost 11 too, in a very different way, because he's now lost 2 daughters, effectively. So, I kind of the same thought. I agree it was overlong, but I did enjoy that more than the lead up part. This may be me being too overly literal, but they're on top of the radio tower, which is what, 75 feet tall, 100 feet tall, and they're going to have 2 planets move next to each other. I'm sorry, if Planet A and Planet B are separated by 100 feet, then the tidal forces would have torn them to bits hours ago. It didn't make no sense.
Now, admittedly, we're inside the wormhole, so
that's one of those things where I'm like, when they first said it, I'm like, this is the tallest. I'm sorry, I did. They've been very good about not
mucking up physics.
Yeah, not. either ignore the physics so we don't have to think about it, or pretend they don't exist, or I don't know. That was one of those things that just never. There had to be a better way to tell that part of the story.
I kind of agree. I think they got a little stuck, quite frankly. I think it's just how we can do this thing, and that's how they came up with it.
Yeah.
So it worked. But yeah, that was my take behind it. And so again, the real thing I had the problem with, I appreciated the trying to do the epilogue and explain it. What I thought was the problem is it just drug. And to me, I mean, literally, I looked up after we finished the battle with Vecna, and I'm like, there's still an hour left. And I'm like, are we going to have half an hour of having to deal with the military here?
That's what I thought was going to happen.
And I was like, oh my God, like, what's Kay going to do? Like, where's this going to go?
Yeah, I figured, like, the Vecna, we're going to find out was that threat is gone, but now there's a whole other threat, and then we'll have, half
That's
an
also
hour.
where I figured 8 would come back. That's part of the reason why when we saw the 11 death scene, I was like, okay, all my whole thoughts with 8, we didn't need her because she didn't have to fight Kay. I figured that 8 would be alive because she had to fight Kay. That was going to be part of the point because that was the battle brewing.
Did you get a sense that the military guy who was working for Kay, I thought was having a couple points in the show, having second thoughts about Kay's level of irrationality and aggressiveness?
Oh, yeah.
And then the fact that they just like summarily executed him, I was just like, well, that was kind of a abrupt, strange finish. Like, he didn't seem like he wasn't a good guy by any means.
Well, it's 11 who does it, though.
I know, but he definitely wasn't a good guy. But he seemed like a more tormented character, I thought. I mean, for a guy that didn't get a ton of screen time.
But he kind of breaks down at the end too.
Yeah,
I think it's part of, but it's again, that was the sort of thing. So that was sort of my basic take behind it. And then I think the one that a lot of people, obviously everybody's talking about is the twist D&D ending, and the idea of what, as they say, well, what about the mage? Which obviously talking about 11.
Yeah,
and
did she secretly survive?
Yeah,
we don't know.
And then you get Mike's theory about what it is. What I really liked about it is the fact that it's, the picture of her at the end is it clearly Mike's fantasy.
I interpreted it that way. This
waterfalls.
Is Mike imagining it with the waterfalls.
Yeah.
And they never tell us for sure that that's what happened.
Yeah. And again, if you read any of their interviews with the Duffer Brothers, their comment is it's not supposed to be clear which one it is. Choose which one you want to believe. That's the reason the kids say at the end, what do you want to believe? Because there's a recognition in the end that it doesn't matter which is true. You can never have a resolution, because if you have a resolution, it won't be true anymore. And I was like, okay, that's accurate, as to what it is. And I really liked that. I also liked it being the conflicting D&D game, because as somebody who role played, and like we had a big group in college that played all through college, you do that. You have the big, massive final campaign, and you tend to blow up the world, and that kind of thing. So, and I was like, that worked. Like, it completely worked as to what it was. And then in the end, you kind of have the characters go their own ways. You do what you want to do. You may write the last one sentence of what does your character do, in the course of doing it, and you retire the character sheet.
Yeah.
And it was that kind of thing where I was like, that really worked, and it fit with the D&D. It just really worked, and that's part of the reason I was so annoyed with the rest of it, is because I'm like, that could have been the only part you needed, because that's the part that really worked.
Yeah, you could have really skipped the whole graduation thing. You could have had a shorter or different scene with the adult characters, and just gone straight to they're playing D&D after graduation. It's their last game, and then the younger generation comes down and takes over and starts playing, which I thought was fun.
And then they said they really wanted to end it on the closed door, and I liked the idea of the closed door.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the only complaint I had with it, is I didn't think it was a sort of accurate looking door. I thought it would have been better if it would have been just a little bit more of a lab looking door, quite frankly.
I thought it should have been like a traditional 80s fake wood grain, like hollow core basement door with bad paneling.
But yeah, so those kind of things. So that was sort of my take behind it. The thing I think is interesting, and this is sort of where I alluded in the beginning, obviously there's a lot of fans that did not like it at all. I think there's a lot of fans that have sort of the same kind of reaction I did, which was I didn't like it, but at the same time I appreciated what they were trying to do, and there were parts of it I did like.
Yeah, a lot of people are just like, this was the worst, they ruined the entire series. I didn't feel that way. I just felt like it's like a lot of these things when you have talented writers and good directors with a good idea. We see this over and over and over. It is so hard to land the plane, right? We see this with J.J. Abrams. The first season of Lost is one of the greatest seasons of TV I've ever seen, and the last season is one of the worst, right?
But parts of the last season are brilliant.
Again, parts are, right? Because the core of the good idea is still there. It is hard to write endings. You and I are writers. I've got a story I'm working on. I know how it ends. I have no idea how I'm going to write it.
Yeah.
And endings are hard to do, and we just see the first act is easy because you're setting up the stakes and everything is mysterious. Nobody knows what's going on. The second act is not as easy, but it's fun because we're escalating the stakes and establishing what the big conflict's going to be. how do you resolve it in a way that fits the narrative theme, satisfies all the character arcs? That's really, really, really hard to do, because by the time you get there, you realize you're committed to plot decisions that don't make sense anymore. So do you retcon them, which is what happens a lot, or do you just ignore it and move on, which also happens a lot? So there's not a lot of shows that I think Breaking Bad's one of the few that almost flawlessly tied up every single loose end.
Yeah, and I have to admit, I never watched Breaking Bad. It just never appealed to me. I know people keep telling me I should, but it just never appealed to me. But it's one of those things where I agree with it. And I think what I think is interesting is the number of sort of fan comments of both. And I joke about it because, you said in the last episode, before I gave my theory of everything on this show, whatever I say is probably going to be more interesting than the actual finale. I think
which it was, absolutely.
But the thing about it is, I think a lot of the clients...
That wasn't exactly a bold prediction on my part, though, given the level of complexity to the Kirk mind.
But I think one of those things that you had with it is now that all the fans saying, oh, this is really a head fake ending. There's another episode coming. As you said, we're recording this the afternoon of the 7th. The whole argument that there's a secret episode dropping tonight... I don't think it's going to happen.
I don't think it's going to happen. I'd love it if it did, but I just think we're all outthinking ourselves, right?
The reason I say for it is I said to me, it's the same argument that why The Manchurian Candidate is such a good movie and such a terrible political strategy. Because the number of things you have to have done to make it work right, they didn't plan on. The Duffer Brothers didn't plan on people not liking the finale.
Yeah, it's just as hard to write something bad on purpose as it is to write something good. There's actually a bad fiction competition that's really hard to win.
Yeah, and so it's those kind of things, as to you have it. So that was sort of my take. I think it's interesting that they had that, but I do also think it really says something in some sense about the fans, of the fact that the fans kind of don't want the story to end in the way that it ended. In many respects, the proposed head fake, the idea it's all Vecna's, this is all Vecna inside Vecna's head, none of it actually happened. So essentially the entire last episode of season 5 didn't happen, is effectively the idea behind it. That's an intriguing concept. But the concept behind it, to me, what it is but then we have to have another season to end the show. And really that's what this is we want to have another season to end the show. And that's not going to happen. So, that's not what happened.
So one of the things, this is a minor point, but one of the things, what do we always say about genre fiction? You got to have rules and you got to follow them. And they were good about that in the first season. They got away from it over time. But there were a couple moments.
They were only really bad about it in the third season.
Yeah, there were a couple moments in this finale where they really violated that. And the one that sticks out to me is when Hopper is guarding El in the tank, and all of a sudden Vecna can speak to him telepathically and project illusions in front of him just to get him to pull El out of the tank so we can escalate the stakes. I mean, okay, there's lots of ways to do that, but if Vecna has that ability, it would have come in awful handy about 500 other times over the course of this episode. Why would he never use it any other time but there?
Yeah, and that was, I thought you had I thought the tank thing was interesting. I thought they did some interesting thing. It was another one where I said, and I think one of the problems they had is I was constantly second guessing what is an illusion. Whenever we had 8 on screen, what is an illusion? Because we knew that that's what 8 did. And quite frankly, I thought that was good in some respects.
See, I thought it may have been 8 doing that when it was revealed that was an illusion. I was like, okay, so are we supposed to think 8 has betrayed us? Because she can do that. It would make more sense for her to do that selectively if she's like an undercover agent of some kind.
But then we also had the tanks of herbicide. And I'm sitting here and I'm like, okay, is this supposed to be I realized afterwards, I think it's supposed to be Agent Orange. I think that's the idea of where it's supposed to go. It took me a second, but when I saw it, I'm like, I thought it was a reference to the rats in season 3.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
And then I was like, no, obviously it's supposed to be Hopper's past. You did this, and he's referencing his daughter. And I'm like, I wonder if it's supposed to be Agent Orange. And that was my immediate take.
Oh yeah, because I think there's some references to him in Vietnam. Which would make sense.
And so but I thought it was a little too subtle if it was. But it was one of those things where
I'd rather be too subtle than not subtle enough.
But it was one of those things where I think it was there's a lot of stuff in it that I think got second guessed because the episode didn't quite flow right to finish. And again, it's hard to do. We know it's hard to do, but that's the reason I think a lot of the fans are upset is because you can come up with so many better fan theories of what happened that, quite frankly, many of which they never could have done. These couldn't have made him into an episode. My son even commented when he was talking about season 5, he commented afterwards and he said, you could have made the last episode into an ententire season.
You could have, yeah.
There was enough there. And, at that point in time, and then have an entire season to be how this ends. Why didn't they? And the answer is because they need to end the show.
Because they were contracted for 8 episodes. That's why.
There's a practical reality of the fact that the show needs to end. And so, that was there was those kind of, sort of, the pieces and things, I think, behind it.
So what was in the briefcase then, in the mine shaft?
It's a rock. It's a rock made out of the Mind Flayer particles.
Okay, but where did that guy get it from?
So apparently then, again, this is from reading the interviews with the Duffer Brothers. For those of you who know, then are paying attention to any of this, there are 2 shows currently in production, 1 live action follow-up show and 1 animated show. The animated show takes place between, I believe it's seasons 2 and 3. With a separate,
so we're doing the Star Wars,
a separate issue.
Now. Okay.
And then the live action show they haven't said a lot about, but the Duffer Brothers are literally filming it right now, I believe today. And the that's supposed to be set, everybody presumes, in the 50s.
Yeah, I think we talked about this a lot. Either
there is the stage show already.
Yeah,
but
you and I had talked about, like, they're not going to do more Stranger Things that takes place after, but there's no way they're not going to do prequels and talk about Brenner and how the lab came to be and all that kind of stuff.
And so one of the things that apparently they said in a couple of interviews is it is a rock. It's a rock made out of Mind Flayer particles. You're going to learn why he has it. And like where it comes from and stuff like that. That's in the next show.
All right.
That's essentially the purpose of the next show.
Again, it has kind of a Star Wars Episode 3 feel to it, where the plot doesn't make much sense unless you know a bunch of stuff that's extraneous to the movie. And again, this is me maybe being a cine-snob purist, but at the end of the day, I need to be able to assess this work based on what it is. And if I can't make sense out of it without knowing a bunch of external stuff, then something has gone wrong, right?
Yeah.
And I just, if this is the way content is going, where I can't really fully enjoy or understand it without doing a bunch of research in advance, then I'm going to officially lean into my get off my lawn phase of my life.
He's going to start reading books.
I don't mind reading books. I just don't want to have to enjoy my TV.
But yeah, and I get the point behind that. I think that was a point that they could have done a little bit better. My take of it is, okay, it's something associated with the Mind Flayer. He's exposed to the Mind Flayer. That's all we really need to know.
But like, this is the time where you reveal everything, and Henry's moral arc is like central to this entire episode, particularly the way that they chose to end him. And so having it all start out ambiguously really makes none of those choices make a lot of, again, this is me being a writer, but don't make any sense to me. Like, I would get to the end and just feel like Joyce's wrath is not earned morally. Like, it is to her as the character, but to an audience member who sees the bigger picture, I'm like, I get that she's mad and we're having this cathartic moment, but like, but we're not supposed to really hate Henry. We're supposed to sympathize with him a little bit, right?
Yeah. And quite frankly, if she would have only hit him once.
Yeah, it would have been different.
Or
just make him be a threat. Like, he's still trying to kill her, so she grabs the axe and finishes him off. Yeah. Problem solved, right?
Yeah.
But no, he's helpless and she kills him anyway, which again, maybe that's a callback to he took advantage of helpless children. But I would say that the two situations are not entirely parallel.
Yeah, and so it's, it was interesting as to what I don't think they actually used the other kids to the fullest advantage. I think it had a little more fun with them.
There was too many people at that point. There's a lot of plot. Yeah. Like Vicky got lost at some point in the story and
stuff like that. But it's
what character I thought they handled maybe the best in the entire season was Robin's arc.
Yeah, they did a good job with Robin's arc, actually. And one thing I really like about Robin, we commented about it, it's great that she's the one freaking out at the end because she gives you the tension because she's the one freaking out. And it totally fits her character that it would be her. And it was one of those where it's like, okay, that works. Again, is another sort of thing with it. I also like the way they end it with her being the DJ at graduation, sort of doing the DJing at the graduation with the way we started season 5 and kind of narrating that, hey, look, everything's changed, which I thought was, a good way to do it.
Because you had to have, you need basically the Don Pardo voiceover. All right, welcome back, everybody, to the Super Friends, like to reorient like what's going on since then. So just like the first episode, you can tell the audience what's happened since without having a title card that says, exactly what's going on.
Yeah, it just says 18 months later and then kind of moves on. And so, those are the kind of things that basically I had with it. So I guess my overall take behind it is I found season 5 to be enjoyable to watch as a whole.
Really uneven, though.
I found it to be very uneven, and I found it, quite frankly, I thought book 1 sort of was the most enjoyable to watch, just because it was kind of everything you expected, but it also didn't need to resolve anything. And I thought once they hit the point of needing to start to resolve things, they just had the trouble, and some of this is the Lost problem. They had so many arcs they had to resolve.
Yeah.
And they just couldn't resolve all of them, and then they spent too long resolving ones that they could resolve, to the point that they didn't resolve the other ones. what I did appreciate from it was their attempt to do so.
Yeah.
Because I think too many shows don't try to resolve those arcs. And this one
look
really
at the Star
felt
Wars
like they did.
sequels. Like,
Yes,
I mean,
exactly.
We have a line where Maz Kanata says, "Oh, where'd I get the lightsaber? A story for another time." That they just never explained.
Yeah.
Like, so this one I put in the category of The Last Jedi in the sense that it's not bad.
Yeah.
It has a lot of bad in it. It also has a lot of genius in it.
Yeah.
But it's also mixed up that it's kind of hard for me just to say, does that mean it's 5 out of 10? Well, parts of it are 9 out of 10, and parts of it are 1 out of 10, and parts of it are 6 out of 10. And it just, I feel like the final episode was a microcosm of the whole season. Really uneven. The highs were really high. The lows were really cringe. And I kind of walked away just feeling, probably for that reason, unsatisfied and a little disappointed, but not entirely.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, well, maybe relief is the word I'm looking for. It's over. I've seen it all, and I can stop thinking about it.
I did appreciate the idea that when it was over, I could walk away from it. I mean, one of the things, and you know it from the way, talking about the fact that we both write, I like twist endings.
You do.
I like twist endings, and I like ambiguous
endings. You like
endings.
ambiguous endings.
And so to me, it was, I appreciated the idea of it being an ambiguous ending, but I also liked the fact that it was explicitly an ambiguous ending. So it was the idea of him basically saying, I believe this could be the thing, but I have absolutely nothing to support it.
Yeah, some inferences from what happened and some things he observed, which were set up really well.
Yeah.
I agree. I think that the D&D thing, I thought they were a little over exuberant for high school seniors. I thought, you and I played D&D. I never got that excited at rolling a natural 20. It was more of a fist pump thing. But setting that aside, it was fun to see the characters having fun, and the way that they use the D&D characters to project and foreshadow the ultimate journey of each of the real characters, I thought was really good, and that the way that they had Elle kind of part of that story was really good. And I really liked that they brought the actress back to kind of be. Either we're being told as the audience that this is the reality, or it's just Mike's imagination. And you're right. I like that they don't tell us which one it was. Yeah. And I really liked it.
Well, they expressly tell you that's Mike's imagination. It just might be real.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're given reason to think he might be right.
Yeah.
And we didn't get a post-credit scene where Elle was in Tibet somewhere, I was expecting a post-credit scene after like at the end of season 1 where the Upside Down's not really gone. Thank God that did not happen.
Actually, and that's one of the things when they destroyed the Upside Down, when they sort of tore the Upside Down apart. That was part of the reason I liked the idea, because I actually found it very cathartic, quite frankly, to watch the Upside Down be destroyed.
Yeah.
And one of the things I kept thinking about at the end, and I kept wondering actually if they were going to do it as sort of the post-credit scene, is at the very end when they were sort of showing the last scenes of Hawkins, if we were just going to see when it faded, it was going to fade through black and white, which I was I could see doing that kind of thing as just a touch of hey, maybe it's not totally gone, type of thing with it. But at the same time, there's no clear reference as to whatever it was, or even do one of those where when the camera pans out, it kind of flips over, but nothing happens.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. Sort of, I was I could see them doing like that. Again, this is kind of me being the twist ending. I would have liked slightly more twist ending of the idea of what happened.
I think they balanced that right. I did not want them to go back and do maybe the Upside Down's not gone. That's just, to me, that's like Rey burying the lightsabers, which they're just going to dig up, and do more serious. So I like that they're putting a cap on this and saying, we're done with this story now.
Yeah.
Not that nobody will ever come back and have an Upside Down that takes place in 2004.
But we have an Upside Down in a different city.
Yeah.
And that's the thing with it, and a different end point with the wormhole.
Yeah, but I think they need to put a cap on the Hawkins story and move on. If they want to do prequels, that's fine. But these characters need to be done. Yeah. They just do. It just played out at this point.
It's played out. It's done, and stuff like that. And to me, that was the thing, and that was also why I kind of missed the military having a finality. Because it just really felt
that
like
would have
Kay
filled the
needed
time
a finality.
a little bit better.
She's the only one. I understood the comment where they said a couple of the other characters don't sort of have true arcs at the end. You don't really get a Robin what happens afterwards arc. You just get her being the narrator. Type of thing. And it was okay, she's at school, but you kind of don't get to where she goes.
Yeah, wasn't she she's in New York, right? I think
she was a Smith.
Okay, yeah, that's right.
And so it was one of those things where it was like, okay, that, that kind of works, sort of, but you don't get what she's doing in the way you get the other ones.
Yeah.
I also commented, like, I really liked the way they did the sort of core group with the D&D ending, where it was just one scene from their life that was kind of, because again, it was, we don't need more. We want to know Max and Lucas end up together. Okay. Like, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's enough for us to know just that. We don't need to know, they don't need to live happily ever after. We don't know anything else. With Steve, just showing him as the coach would have been enough.
Yeah.
Like, we wouldn't have needed anything else. We readily could have seen, we could have a scene with Jonathan filming the thing, doing something where, like, he has
with
an
Robin's
NYU film
voiceover
school or
talking
like
about
that.
how much has changed. We got a new baseball coach, and
Yeah.
Hawkins is famous for winning this film festival.
Yeah.
John, like, you could have done that entire sequence with the voiceover, and then it ends with the D&D campaign,
Yeah.
or the voiceover leads into that scene. You're right. There's a way to write that. Spend more time wrapping up the military plot, and maybe less time just obsessing over that time period.
Yeah, and then to get to the twist ending with 11 and have that kind of be this, like, literally an hour in, and you suddenly have this kind of cool twist ending with the D&D plot.
Yeah, because it really felt like, there's a lot of falling action, like a lot of it.
Yeah.
And although I enjoyed it, once you said it went on too long, I think I agree.
Yeah, so that was the thing. And again, the other complaint I really had with it is I would have really liked them to have done it where when the Upside Down portals closed, it just literally was never there. I thought that.
Did
would
we
have been a
find out what
neat
happened to
play.
Murray? Was he still around?
No, he's actually another one of the ones they didn't follow up on.
Yeah.
So they don't follow up on Murray. They don't follow up on Kay. They don't follow up on the Robin's love interest, Vicky.
We never got Barb back.
Yeah, you never find. Well, Barb was dead. I mean, that's
I know. I never gave up hope.
Even though you do get Stacy, which I think is interesting, and I had to look up who Stacy was at the end. That's if you don't know, by the way, Stacy is the one that Dustin hits on at the prom when he has Steve the hairs.
Yeah.
And she basically blows him off, and then Elle pops the milkshake on her later on. That's one of the things where it's like, okay, that was her. So I was like, okay, that was kind of a cute thing of having her hit on Dustin. Okay, that was kind of just a neat scene. But it was one of those things where it was like, we didn't really get follow-ups from the parents. We sort of did.
No, we saw the mom. She's all scarred up, and the dad is apparently unharmed somehow.
Yeah. And then you also don't really get, Will's mom either. I mean, she's
there,
but it's really Hopper's resolution story.
Yeah. Erica kind of disappears from the story.
Yeah, you lose Erica. You definitely really lose Erica. You really kind of lose you really lose Derek. I mean, yes, Derek is the
he's in the end.
He's in the catcher, but they're also still in the school. They're still there. So
Yeah.
there's some argument. Okay, that's just the thing that they have with it. They're the next generation taking over. But it was, to me, again, it was one of those things where it was just, when I saw the thing, as soon as they had the thing where it was like, okay, we just had the 11 and this, we know 11 is supposedly dead with the destruction of the Upside Down. I literally looked up at the clock and I'm like, how do we still have an hour left?
Yeah.
I mean, because how can you fit another hour into this?
What else is there to talk about, right?
We need a 15-minute follow-up scene, but it's got an hour left. So, like, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
And that was really kind of.
Don't think they made the best use of that time. Speaking of running long, we are at 56 minutes to talk about one episode that was 2 hours long. So why don't we wrap this up? So it's January. That means we have public domain stuff to talk about.
Day.
Our next episode will be our public domain 2026. I did a preview look, by the way, at our Duke Law website. There's some interesting stuff to talk about.
Yeah, actually, it's supposed to be a posting. It's posted on LinkedIn, as are a few of my comments about Stranger Things and some of the things. If you look me up there on LinkedIn, you'll find a bunch of my Stranger Things content. Because obviously the business site is the place to post Stranger Things content.
That's where I post all my home automation stuff now, so. All right, so that's all for this time. We'll see you next time. Lorem, play us out.
The views expressed by the participants of this program are their own and do not represent the views of, nor are they endorsed by Lewis Rice LLC, its officers, directors, employees, agents, representatives, shareholders, and subsidiaries. None of the content should be considered legal advice. As always, consult a lawyer. This podcast was produced and recorded in St. Louis, Missouri.